Hello, and welcome to the Hermit Lab. Today we're in the alphabet series on the letter Y. Y is for Yin and Yamas. This will be a 50-minute Yin class, and I'm integrating discussion of all 5 of the Yamas. I am bringing a lot of attention to this book right here. This book has shown up in several teacher trainings that I've been involved in, whether I was the one leading it or I was a student in the teacher training. I highly recommend it. It's definitely a easy read. You can read it in one day. It's a wonderful introduction to what the Yamas and Niyamas are, and it's written in such a way that's it's not so scary or lofty or unattainable. So definitely check it out. It's called The Yamas and Niyamas by Deborah Adele. All right, here she comes. I don't know about you, but I need a big breath. Hi, Marge. All right, so like I said, today we are doing Yin Yoga. Thanks for being here with me. Help yourself to some comfy pants. I invite you to take your hair down. Yeah, whatever it looks like. This is a slow practice. We'll be playing with 5 poses and talking about all 5 of the Yamas: Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, and Aparigraha. We will have a Shavasana at the beginning and at the end as bookends to this practice today. Thanks for being here with me to move slowly. I have 2 blocks with me. I'm going to show variations with both blocks, with one block, without blocks for all of these. So you do you. That being said, we'll get started in Shavasana. I have an old phone with me so that I can keep time. We're going to be in all of these positions for 5 minutes. So begin to make yourself comfortable. Whatever that looks like in your Shavasana, maybe it's legs long. For me, I like laying hands on the belly. Perhaps you have arms out, palms up. If it's safe for you to close the eyes, let them fall heavy or shut. If your lower back bothers you with legs out long, you can take constructive rest. Feet plant about the edges of your mat and let your knees knock together. Find something that works. I'll do my best not to talk too much. I do want to give you space. But a brief kind of introduction to Yin Yoga. This is on the other side of the coin. If you tend to practice a lot of power yoga or vinyasa or Ashtanga or things that really, really move in the muscles and the heat, it's bright. This is all yang energy. And, there can be no lightness without darkness. So we're on the other side of that coin here in a yin practice. We're getting deeper than muscles and skin, and we're aiming to kind of sweep out the junk that's hiding in dusty corners into our joints, our soft tissue, ligaments. It's not exactly meant to be comfortable. That's more of a restorative yoga practice. In Yin Yoga, we do kind of work up to an edge. Stillness is nice and recommended, but fidgets to move around if you're feeling something sharp or stinging or numbing or any kind of pain. Let your intuition go through a really safe, slow process of discerning if that is pain or if it's sensation. You don't want to engage any muscles. You don't want to try or crank or pull in any of these postures. And we'll move very slowly. And I also want to take a moment here to explain what we're talking about today as we visit each posture. In the 8-limbed path of yoga philosophy, the first limb is a group of 5 things called yamas. And yama can be defined as restraint, what it's doing is kind of making the external environment safe for everyone. It's like building a social contract so that we can have this external safe environment so that we can then go into the second limb, which are the niyamas, or personal observances, and we begin to sculpt our internal landscape. But we can't do anything on the inside if it's not safe on the outside. So the yamas and niyamas have been compared to the 10 Commandments, for example. Just kind of moral law. I'll be reading excerpts from each chapter of Deborah Adele's book on the 5 yamas, which are nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, non-excess, and non-possessiveness. Easy breathing. Find your fingers, your toes, the back of your head rocking side to side. If there's a full body stretch that feels good here, please take it. Walk the feet in one at a time. You can take hands to the tops of the thighs, give them a gentle push. And find hands to the knees. Draw little circles in one direction. And the other. Okay. Our first posture will be reclined bound angle. Supta Baddha Konasana, feet together, knees apart. You're welcome to take this without any block. If you have a block, you can consider laying it on your belly. I also like to take it flat underneath my head just to make sure I'm not cranking my neck. Another option for a single block is to lay it underneath your upper back, turning this into a bit more of a back bend, a heart opener. Having it flat and wide can be nice. Some people like to make it the medium level and long, so it's right along the line of your spine. That's a bit more of a head drop back behind you. I also know people who like to take their feet on top of a block and let their knees fall apart from there. Now, if you have 2 blocks, you're welcome to take a block under either knee or thigh at any height that works for you, just for some extra support if you find your knees are floating in space. If you'd like a little more, you can do the opposite and lay the blocks on the knees, on the legs for added weight, especially if you have weighted blocks, cork blocks. Now here's the block bed that I like to make: a hamburger and a hot dog. The hamburger's wide and flat, goes on the back, and the hot dog you lay your head on. It's a nice chest opener. And then you can play around with the height that you like of the block underneath your head: tall, medium, or lowest. I'm going to start with it on the highest. And here we begin our 5 minutes. Find a variation that works for you. So the first yama, kind of the seed of the entire yoga philosophy, is ahimsa. So himsa means violence, and as I've said before, putting an A in front of a term in Sanskrit negates it, so ahimsa is non-violence. But if you prefer to think of things not in a negative way, but in a positive way, this can just be boiled down to love or compassion. What I'd like to do is simply read several excerpts from this book and allow you to just absorb them as you do. See what resonates. If anything rings true for you or not. In Eastern thought, nonviolence is so valued that it stands at the very core and foundation of all yoga, philosophy, and practice. When we feel hurried, afraid, powerless, out of balance, and harsh with ourselves, we may find ourselves speaking words of unkindness or even exploding with a violent outburst. As our awareness of these nuances grow, we learn that our ability to be nonviolent to others is directly related to our ability to be nonviolent within ourselves. To create a life and a world free of violence is first and foremost to find our own courage. How we treat ourselves is in truth how we treat those around us. Love lies at the core of nonviolence and begins with our love of self, not a love that is egocentric, but a love that is forgiving and lenient, a love that sees the humor in the imperfections and accepts the fullness of the human expression. Our inability to love and accept all the pieces of ourselves creates ripples, tiny acts of violence that have huge and lasting impact on others. Lucille Clifton once said, "Every pair of eyes facing you has probably experienced something you could not endure. Every human being walking this earth has painful stories tucked in the corners of their hearts. If we could remember this truth, perhaps we could see with the eyes of compassion rather than the eyes of our own judgments and preferences." Ahimsa asks us to step lightly, do no harm, and to honor the relationship we have with the earth, with each other, and with ourselves. Rediscover your breath if you've lost it. And begin to find some easy movement. Blinking eyes open if they've shut. We all might be in a different place here, so if you've got blocks beneath you, gently remove them. And we'll just end up curled over onto one side. I chose my left. And very carefully help yourself up to a seat. Setting up for our second pose, we'll be taking a forward fold, kind of the opposite of what we just did. Legs are long in front of you. They can be hips width distance. If sitting up tall is an issue, you can take a block underneath your seat. Legs extend. Sometimes it's nice to elevate the hips. It gives us a bit more range to forward fold. You're also welcome to do this with bent knees. You can take a block or 2 blocks underneath your knees to allow them to rest. And you're also welcome to create a structure of blocks so that your forehead can find a place to rest. So setting up blocks in between the legs where it makes sense, kind of playing around with the combinations of heights you're going to use, and so on and so forth. I'm going to start here. You're welcome to sit up tall or fold with me. All right, here we go. Take a bow. So this is another place where you don't want to be yanking or like pulling this whole time. We are here for 5 minutes, so let it be passive. Disengage muscles. Let the back of the neck fall open. Give your forehead somewhere to rest if possible. The second yama that we'll be talking about is called satya, which means truthfulness. And this can be a little tricky when it comes after nonviolence or love, because sometimes truth hurts. So here are some excerpts that I've pulled, and let them land as they land. What is driving you to distort yourself or silence yourself or say yes when you mean no? What is so dangerous in the moment about the truth that you are choosing to lie? These are questions that merit our pondering. Can you imagine speaking and acting so correctly that you never have to go back and apologize or make a new agreement? Can you trust yourself? Can you risk telling yourself the truth? Can you keep the promises you make to yourself and to others? The compassion of nonviolence keeps truthfulness from being a personal weapon. What are we so afraid of? What might my life look like if I were willing to contact truthfulness in every moment? A statement by Mahatma Gandhi. I know that in embarking on nonviolence, I shall be running what might be termed a mad risk, but the victories of truth have never been won without risks. If you find yourself in self-indulgence, ask yourself, what am I not expressing? Act on life-giving opportunities despite the consequences. Make movement toward the external world with your internal hopes and dreams. Face each moment head-on with clarity and courage. Find your breath. Plant your hands to slowly, triple slow motion, roll yourself up to a seat. Let the brain arrive. Plant your hands behind you. Let's plant the feet wide and just let the knees knock over to the right. Really let the right hip rotate out, the left hip rotate in and land. And then through center up to the other side, same thing. External, internal rotation. And now we'll move on to our next posture. It's a right side and a left side into our hips. Option 1 is deer pose. Front shin parallel to the front of the mat, knee right in front of the hip. Your left knee comes right out from your hip and your foot back behind the knee. You're also welcome to pull the foot in a little bit if it's not working. Just like this. You can sit up tall or you can walk yourself forward. If you have a block nearby, you can take a block on any height to catch your forehead. You can also use the block underneath that front knee if it's floating out in space. Give it a bit of support. You can keep that block there, and if you have a second block, you can use that as your headrest. Or option 2 is resting half pigeon. Working the left leg long behind you. You can stay up nice and tall, or you can fold forward. With a block, several choices. You can take it underneath your right hip if there's space under there. Give yourself some support. You can also take this block long and flat underneath your back thigh. You can use your second block to get the hip, and so you're completely supported underneath. You're welcome to come down to forearms there, or even rest your head on your hands, perhaps. You can also take a block forward for your head, and your second block underneath your chest, either vertical or flip it horizontal, whichever feels good, to catch your chest, to catch your forehead, so you're not so close to the ground. That one works for me. That's where I'm going to go to start. Find your place, and we begin 5 minutes here. The third yama we're talking about is asteya, or non-stealing. Asteya, or non-stealing, calls us to live with integrity and reciprocity. When we compare ourselves to others, we either find ourselves lacking, which makes us feel cheated, or we find ourselves superior, which leaves us feeling arrogant. We may find ourselves trying to one-up their stories and successes and experiences by coming behind them with our own more fabulous tale. It is all an attempt to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Perhaps we steal from others by not paying attention to them or discounting them. In all the instances where we steal, we have made the situation about us, not about the other. There I lose my blocks to come closer to the floor. The ownership of things is steeped deep in our language and culture and makes it hard for us to appreciate the extent to which nothing is really ours. All self-sabotage, lack of belief in ourselves, low self-esteem, judgments, criticisms, and demands for perfection are forms of self-abuse in which we destroy the very essence of our vitality. When we are engaged in the joy and challenge of building ourselves, we automatically serve the world rather than steal from it. Where stealing unleashes pain and suffering on ourselves and others, building our competency opens up a world of joy and possibility. It is a grand adventure to turn our attention away from stealing and toward the lifelong task of shaping ourselves into someone of value. Notice when and how you steal from others through time, attention, one-upmanship, power, confidence, and not being able to celebrate others' successes. Notice where you are stealing from the earth and stealing from the future. Live as a visitor to this world rather than an owner. Reconnect with your breath. Place your hands down and ease yourself up nice and tall. Take your sweet time. And to transition this, fall to your right hip, turn sideways onto your mat, place your hands behind you, and do that same knee drop over to the left, letting it land. Slowly changing up and over to the right. Okay, we're just going to flip over to our left hip to take this on the other side. All of the options are still there for you. I'll show you again. Option 1 is to start in deer. Sit up taller, you can take it down, 90-degree angles in your legs, or hugging that foot in a little bit closer to your seat. Chest can come forward. Or you can join me for resting half pigeon and begin to create your support system beneath you. And our 5 minutes has begun. The fourth yama is brahmacharya. Now, originally, it directly refers to sexual abstinence, as it was believed that you lose your vital life force and energy through your sex. So a very strict original connotation of this is sexual abstinence. Brahmacharya, the word itself, literally means walking with God. So this particular yama, in order to understand it and apply it to ourselves, is really more understood these days as non-excessiveness. And here I read. Whether we find ourselves overdoing food, work, exercise, or sleep, excess is often a result of forgetting the sacredness of life. Brahmacharya reminds us to enter each day and each action with a sense of holiness rather than indulgence. Brahmacharya reminds us to enter each day and each action with a sense of holiness rather than indulgence, so that our days may be lived in the wonder of sacredness rather than the misery of excess. We seem far from grasping the concept of enough. When a certain emotional attachment is placed with a simple body need, we can find ourselves in trouble. Without realizing it, we have acquired an addiction-like need for that repetition of the feelings associated with that thing. Sometimes the need is to feel sadness. We are here on this world in part to feel enjoyment and pleasure. If we are in the pleasure and not the addiction, we are practicing brahmacharya. If we are feeding our mental stories and have moved past bodily comfort, we are in addiction and out of harmony with this guideline. We must also be fearless in facing our sadness, grief, and disappointments without needing to soothe them with food or sex. If we find ourselves living in the extremes of addiction, excess, and overindulgence in any place in our life, then fasting, celibacy, or abstinence can be very useful to bring us back to the fullness of pleasure. My ego likes to feel important, and when it doesn't feel very important when I am resting. My ego also doesn't like the idea that life can go on without me, even if only for a few hours. We don't need to be the center of attention and activity all the time. I think it might surprise us to realize how much crazy activity we create in our days just so we can feel important. How many of us go to bed with a sense of accomplishment because we checked a lot of things off our task list, or someone told us how great we were or how we helped others? Examine yourself. Are you willing to be sacred? Find your breath. Place your hands and push up to a taller spine. Fall backwards onto your left hip. Come to a sideways seat. Let your knees drop over to the right. Let it land. And up and over to the left. Let that land. Okay. Moving on to our final posture, the fifth yama. We'll be taking reverse waterfall, legs up the wall, whatever you want to call it. You can do this in the center of your room on your mat. Just toss your legs up, let them be soft. You can take a block, press into your feet, set it underneath your sacrum, not on your spine, and elevate your legs up here as well. You can also play around with stacking 2 blocks underneath you to get a little more height. You're welcome to join me over at the wall. And you can bring a block with you here too. So first, just lower down. I like to keep my seat a little bit away from the wall so that my legs are kind of resting at a bit of an angle. You can stay there, you can grab your block, push into your feet, lift your hips up and set them down. Find whichever works for you. You can think about bringing heels together and letting your legs just kind of roll out. Shouldn't be work. Okay, the last yama. Here we are at aparigraha, or non-possessiveness. It's the work of letting go. Can be interpreted as non-attachment, non-greed, non-clinging, non-grasping, non-coveting. we can simply think of it as being able to let go. So here I read. It is the nature of things to change, and by failing to let them change or move on, they begin to disappoint us, and our attempts to hold on begin to make us stale and discontent. What we try to possess possesses us. Aparigraha invites us to let go and to pack lightly for our journey through life, all the while caring deeply and enjoying fully. What if we could trust life like we trust the breath? What if we could take in all the nourishment of the moment and then let it go fully, trusting that more nourishment will come? Like the breath, when it is held too long, the things that nourish us can become toxic. The nature of the realm of aparigraha is impermanence. Everything changes. If we can fall back to the breath and watch the belly rise and fall with each inhalation and each exhalation, we can feel the truth of the transience of all things. Any kind of holding too long or grasping too far forward in an effort to maintain a sense of security is deadly to our spiritual growth and the natural unfolding of our lives. Anything we cling to creates a maintenance problem for us. The material items that we hoard, collect, buy because they are on sale, or take because they are free, all take up space and demand our attention. Clutter in our physical space blocks our ability to physically move, while clutter in our minds blocks our freedom to expand and have space for the next thing life wants to bring to us. The word attachment can be traced to a root word that means to nail. How many suitcases full of expectations, tasks, plans, resentments, and unforgiven moments was I toting around with me every day? Even airlines know to charge a fine when we pack over the limit, I thought to myself, and yet I wonder how many of us are packing over the limit every morning and wearying ourselves throughout the day with this heavy baggage. What if we woke up every morning and took nothing with us? What if that was the whole point? What if we unpacked our way to God, unpacked our way to freedom, unpacked our way to being? Non-attachment does not mean that we don't care or that we somehow shut ourselves off from the pleasures and joy of life in each other. We are asked to let go of the clinging to the thing, not the enjoyment of the thing itself. What wants to come to us is so great, and what we hold on to is often so small. A bird cannot hold its perch and fly. Neither can we grasp anything and be free. Love is what is left when you've let go of all the things you love. Find some movement in the toes. You're welcome to stay here at the wall, or slide your feet down, let them fall into your heart, and roll over to one side, landing for a moment, feeling the shift in the legs. If you'd like to Shavasana back on your mat, make your easy way there. I like to take a block underneath my head. If you catch yourself with your chin cranking up toward the ceiling when your head is flat, this can be nice as well. And again, here's a demo of constructive rest. If being on your back does not feel good, you can give this a try. Feet to the outer edges of your mat, knees knocking together. Or decide if you'd rather extend your legs forward, finding a place of rest that is meaningful and easy for you. And I invite you to just ponder these 5 yamas, to recall if any one of them called to you more than the other, why that may be. Love, truth, non-stealing, non-excessiveness, and letting go. Creating a safe external environment together is the first charge of the yogic path. Take a breath in and a breath out. Drop down, leave it alone, and let go. Shavasana. Take a new breath in and an old breath out. Find your fingers and your toes in the back of your head and your space. Reaching arms overhead if that feels right. Find all of your length, all of yourself. And choose to meet me over on your favorite side. Give it a real pause. As you're ready, help yourself up to an easy seat. Find your anchor points beneath you. Roll the shoulders up. Exhale to soften them down. Let the chin fall slightly and hands find each other at heart center, right into left, light into dark, yang and yin, strong and soft. The duality that is within us. Big breath in. Open mouth. Thumb knuckles float up to third eye center. Honor yourself for showing up, slowing down. Take a bow. And keep these sentiments close. Check out this book. Do your work. These are tricky times. I thank you for being here with me. There she goes. Thank you all so much for showing up to slow down with me. If you have any questions, let me know. Check this book out. It's a good one. I'll see you soon. Bye.